That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show for part 2 of our deep dive with Derek DeStefan. We had him on for part 1, talking about his grandfather's testimony in the Black Projects in the military. And that was episode 431, Cosmos Clearance, 38 levels above top secret. We went through a lot of the foundation of his testimony and his involvement in these secret programs and basically reverse engineered technology and his knowledge of what has actually been happening in the shadow world for quite some time. So we're going to go even further today into his testimony and get into some of the more exciting stuff that is very relevant to the disclosure that we're receiving right now on the mainstream, which is mind-blowing to me. The conversations that I'm seeing online ESPN, we talked about, they're discussing extraterrestrials now. One of the reports, one of the news anchors was talking about even portal technology, and they're talking about human alien hybrid programs and breeding programs and things that have always remained a topic on Journey to Truth and or on podcast similar, but it hasn't actually made it out into a world stage. That is changing before our eyes. So Derek's grandfather's testimony and all of him and his brother have done incredible research. All of their research I think it's going to start to pay off. I think it's going to start to pay off. And I think right now what we're seeing is some amazing information that has surfaced decades ago, technically. And now it's being recognized as legitimate. So we're going to dive deep into what he has uncovered, and we can't wait to get into part 2 here. And welcome back, Derek.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. And I'll tell you this, I've been kind of waiting. It's been almost a year since I've made basically the majority of the presentation, and I haven't been able to kind of get it in its full form the way I'd like to. So it's been a long time coming. So I'm very happy to be here and share with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. And Aaron just got back from Contact in the Desert, which was apparently their biggest year yet. You were just telling us, and I felt the call this year too. I didn't go, but I think a lot of people did because it's in the air. Disclosures in the air. And just really quickly before we dive in, Aaron, like what was the feeling there at the conference?
It was amazing. It was, and I had been before, but it was way back in 2018, and it was great then. It was good, but it didn't quite hit the level for me to keep wanting to go every year, because I like the smaller, more intimate conferences, more in nature, like we've talked about. But some people prefer that, but to me, it wasn't. I was like, oh, it's good. But this year, I just felt the call, like you said. It was like I need to go this year, And Amanda couldn't. She had to stay with the kids and other stuff going on. But she's like, you go. And I'm so glad I did, because it was such an amazing time. Like, the vibe was so good. The people, everyone there, just like, there was no negativity or low vibe, or even I didn't even sense that much clickiness like I sensed more in the past. It was just like all around amazing. And like you said, there's this vibe right now of disclosure, and everybody's really excited about it. And I'm sure there were new people that are just getting into the stuff because of what's happening on a mainstream level, and they're like seeking out these types of conferences. And I'm sure that's why they had a big influx as well. And yeah, it was like by far the highest attendance, and they've been doing it since 2013.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And that's incredible. And I think part of the reason is that we finally feel like we're making some headway in disclosure. It's like, okay, like we're getting somewhere now. So people don't feel like we're just doing this all for nothing anymore, because it can feel like that. It has felt like that in the past. But here we are right now, 2026. Who knows what the rest of this year is going to look like? But Derek, you wanted to start off with a video, right? That you sent me with your grandfather speaking about the Black Manta TR-3B craft.
Yeah, I'd like to, but just real quick on that point about Journey to Truth. I'm sorry, the Conduct in the Desert. My only time going was 2019, and that was really what set me off on this path after that conference, because it was so good meeting the people, the speakers, and like you can just have one-on-one conversations. Say like with Emery Smith, I got to meet for the first time. Laura, I got to meet for the first time, and got me into me and my brother both on this track. So it was a powerful
Nice.
conference for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what those things do. A lot of people, it's how you find your community, you find your way, and it's like a stepping stone for anyone in this field.
Well, hopefully we can all be there next year. I'd love to go when it's hard with family, but that's my goal. But I'll tell you that this is a video now, and we're kind of jumping right in the middle of the presentation where we left off. And just quickly to remind you guys, like for those that didn't see it last one, I did get new information based on just running AI and running my grandfather's retirement record and basically showing all the medals that he received, the awards, his tours of duty when he was stationed in Japan, Korea, Germany, and it just basically gave me all these numbers that said he was very high up in the military. He must it's because he had also a top secret clearance. It makes sense that as to why he would have a testimony like he does after the fact. So we ran through a lot of those numbers. I might have some more to show you, but now we're getting into more of what he put in his book in 2003, Life with the Cosmos Clearance. And one of the things that you see all the time now, people talking about is the black triangles, the black triangle craft, whether it's, from our reverse engineered craft or from the ETs themselves. And this is what my grandfather had to say talking about that and some of these other highly classified crafts that he was talking about even back in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah, and let me get this queued up here. I'll just go ahead and play it. But this craft, from my understanding, is, from reading books like The Sands of Time and even your grandfather's book, this was one of the early reverse engineered crafts that if we see this flying or if this is revealed, this was quite literally, I mean, probably 30 to 50 years old technology at this point. So, but it will seem brand new and groundbreaking to us when they do release this. But let's go ahead and play this.
You don't want to use any more lives, you just send one of these robots in. They fly the airplanes like the Pumpkin Seed, the latest black project. It goes 18 times the speed of sound. There's nobody aboard that. There's a robot thing, a robotic that we have built. Nobody can stand the G-forces because that is not an anti-gravity vehicle. Now, if you have an anti-gravity vehicle, you have no G-factor when you're pulling Gs, okay? But that airplane, the SR-75 and the Roar, they are not anti-magnetic driven vehicle. The Black Manta is. It's a triangular shaped vehicle, and it has electromagnetic anti-gravity engines. The Air Force flies those out of Kirtland, fly them out of Sector 51 and out of Sacred Base in Puerto Rico, and out of a joint use base with Mexico and the United States and the aliens out of Sonora, just opposite the Baja Peninsula.
So interesting, he says, Kirtland, that's right here near, not far from me, like 5 hours from me, New Mexico. Yeah. And that's where Emery Smith's testimony comes out of. And, so we do have evidence of classified programs there already. But this video was from 1998. And he was talking about this stuff as if it had already been perfected. That's to get to my point before we started the video. So Derek, go ahead and share your screen and we can just dive into, what else he has uncovered about this.
Yeah, sure. Let me make sure it's going to pull it up in the right place. Okay. Yeah. So he talked about what he called the Black Manta. There's other terminology for it. Obviously, this type of craft, the TR-3B is the most commonly known. And he said, working within the NRO, it was craft that they were obviously well aware of, and whether or not these defense contractors were working on it, but NRO had their their eyes on it, or however they had their hands on it. And they said, NRO agenda was to weaponize space against a threat from outer space, and this kind of played into the possible false flag event of an alien type of event with using these craft if necessary. So that's one potential plan. And there was a mention of this group within a very highly secretive group, according to my grandfather, called the Development of Conscious Contact Citizenry Department, and he called it was more known as UFO Loosen Up, meaning that It was more of a way for people to get used to the idea, of course, of other beings and that we're not alone and there's contact happening, and that was coming now from just showing these craft more and more. Whether there was like, obviously there can be a positive spin on that or a negative spin on that. It was kind of unclear as to what he was saying, but they could, whether this organization was, what good intentions they had or not. But it said that what is the ET agenda within our own government? This mock demonstration of military technology, the Black Manta, which is actually back engineered ET craft, our technology is setting the stage for weaponizing space against the threat from outer space. The campaign to do this within the public arena was started and implemented by the NRO within this DCCCD program. Let's see. Very few people know about it. It wasn't discussed, at the Disclosure Project. And the funny side note, I asked even like Peter the Insider from the ACIO, who works with Jessica Morocco, and we'll get into that and some of what they had to say about our grandfather. But they claim, that maybe this agency could also be from another timeline. I mean, that's what Peter was picking up on and why it's not as well known or seen anywhere else. So that could be one explanation. But, that goes into a lot of
that's fascinating concept.
Speculate. Yeah, I mean, now we're going kind of far out down the rabbit hole here, and but I'll show you some more documents of what he had in his storage and what lines up, and then you'll see where you kind of have to go into the realm of use your best judgment and discernment as to what is or what isn't truth. But we can tell that truth is obviously stranger than fiction, and we're going to see that more and more, even in the mainstream right now as it plays out. So, this document is related to the Roswell crash, but it was a memo or top secret memo. Cosmic, was it above top secret? And it's either ultra. It's classified as ultra, but it had the interplanetary phenomenon unit in there, and that again was that IPU stamp that our grandfather had, which I still have, that he would stamp these documents as authentic or not. And he also had the license plate, and that's probably the one piece of physical evidence to prove that he had clearances as he claimed to have, just based on my dad going on to the base, to Langley base, with that van that had that license plate without him knowing any idea. He'd just be let on the base, and he was let on without any problems. So again, these physical pieces of evidence that our grandfather was telling the truth. He was possibly connected with this interplanetary phenomenon unit group, which was supposedly started in the 40s before Roswell, even as early as 42, back when the Los Angeles raid happened. And we might mention that later, but this just states the fact that the CIA was going back and looking at making an intelligence assessment on what happened at Roswell, all those involved, the parties involved, Wernher von Braun, some other names, Robert Oppenheimer from the Atomic Energy Commission, all these factors and players involved, and decide and trying to assess what was going on. It was a majestic intelligence type of order. Only magic access access people would have access, based on what it says. And the date's 1960, which would have been around, what was it? General John Samford was director of NSA at the time, and approved by Allen Dulles, who was the director of CIA at the time. But those years and everything kind of play into the whole, how the CIA was involved, and before that, Central Intelligence Group, and when this IPU was started, which would have been just before the CIA, and the Central Intelligence Group was there, and the OSS was there at the time of that. But I'll get into some of the documents and why that matters. I can go more into the book now and the chapters of our grandfather's book, and I'm just going to try to sum up as best I can, because he went deep into the Brotherhood Lodges, into the Masonic orders and the Nazi order type of occult things that they were really Hitler had, and the SS were really trying to go all over the world to find these ancient artifacts and relics, and use what we're now finding and becoming more mainstream as the technology that using the geometries around the world and the energies to, where, like my grandfather states, a lot of the masculine type of symbolism, the phallic symbols of like this Washington Monument and all these other obelisks around the world. And why do we put them in these strategic places around the world? It's done intentionally, and these brotherhood orders know that, and they know it puts an imbalance on the world, on the planet and the energy grid, and suppresses the feminine energies. It helps to create these wars that keep going and going. All this is symbolism, but it also can have a very powerful effect, energetically on us. And I think that's supposedly even the ballroom that Trump put in, from what I've heard. I think Ishmael Perez talked about this, that that was to help kind of upset that energy grid that was established in DC. And we're going to talk a lot about DC actually later in the presentation, and the symbolism there. So anyway, he talks much more about the Brotherhood Lodges. He says that they state, we control all that is just, all that is right, all that is fair. It's this global web of secret society supported by a phenomenal amount of technological genius, including genetic engineering, mind control, psychic phenomenon, all for the New World Order. And he mentioned that, as evil as Adolf Hitler was, he couldn't have come to power without the fanatical support by many other key leaders, and who still orchestrate what we call history, which they basically make the history for us, even up to the death of Princess Diana, probably, of course, the death of JFK also, and we'll talk about that. He stated, as I stated earlier, that his grandfather was a 33rd degree Mason, his dad was a Mason. He was a Mason, but I don't think he just had ties to it because of that line in his family, but he never was a practicing one, as far as I know. And our family is concerned that he never really went much more than that, but it allowed him the access and clearance levels, obviously, later on. The German advanced tech, he goes deep into the Thule and Brill Society, Maria Orsic and Sigrun, that they were these channelers, these mediums, even before the 20s in Vienna, and they were channeling apparently these beings from the Aldebaran system, and it helped to give them these formulas to advance German technology 250 to 400 years ahead of where they currently were, where we are. And he also stated that by 1924, an experimental time machine had been constructed in Adensburg, Germany. And this would have been before the Nazi bell. And maybe Tyler, because you know the Sands of Time series, do you know, I don't know, have you actually heard of anything about the time machine back then from the Germans?
Besides the Nazi bell, I don't know.
Yeah, the Nazi bell is the only thing I've.
Yeah, even in the Sands of Time, I don't know if it mentions anything prior to that. Not to my recollection, but I could be wrong. There's 7 books, so.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows that they were experimenting with obviously making a functional UFO, and they knew of the time dilation and issues with that. And that was, I know that was in the 20s. Even the Sands of Time mentions they got a working craft by 1925. It was like mid-20s from what I remember in those diaries. So
Yeah,
the timing sort of lines up a little bit.
yeah, correct. And
Yeah.
so I didn't mean to say that there was no information about them reverse engineering this and making a functional craft. I just specifically a time machine. I know that
Right.
the whole concept of the books is the origins of time travel. But
Right. But a craft advanced enough automatically becomes a time machine, right? As we
Right.
know. So
Right.
those kind of go hand in hand anyway.
Exactly. So I'm not sure what he's referring to, and if it what project or anything, and if it was directly with Marie Orsic, and as the kind of the Real Dominus Diaries show, there was kind of something else going on aside from what the SS was already doing, right?
Right.
But
Right.
1931 to 1932, they found 2 spacecraft in Brazil, in the Amazon, and that's apparently where Germany really started to reverse engineer the technology just from actual physical craft they had. And it led to prototypes of the Hanabu 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And he says that that's a lot of what the Foo Fighters were, what they were seeing was some of, obviously, some of that type of craft, just looked like these lights that just kind of dotted all over the place, or that could stay with the airplanes, no matter how fast or whatever maneuvers, they would always stay right with them. So
Right.
obviously very advanced stuff as far as propulsion and navigation systems. But the RFC craft was another type. He says the RFC-1 was employed the principle of vortex energy. RFC-2 used as a reconnaissance vehicle that was powered by magnetic impulse steering and an anti-gravity that aptically shifted when accelerating. The faster it moved, the more it changed shape. So did the lights from violet to blue, red, orange to white. And then the last RFC-7, last version was had a pulse beam weapon or a laser cannon on it. And I think he had pictures of some of that too. He also mentions a lot of
Wait,
the.
go back, please.
Yep.
Yeah. So by 1939, they had already built 5 successful reproduction vehicles.
By 1935,
39. I'm sorry, at the very bottom there.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm not even seeing that. Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah, exactly. Trying to. Yep, exactly. I skipped that part. And yeah, separated by storage compartments. So these were getting bigger and bigger as you were going in time, and I'll tell you that it goes even more. But I wanted to mention Schauberger. It's the Schumann, obviously where we get the Schumann resonance. These are Germans or Austrians that were very highly advanced in technology, and the Schauberger was Victor Schauberger who came up with the implosion ideas of using implosion, which is basically utilizing free energy. Instead of the explosion that we get from nuclear forces, you can use implosion, and that kind of ties into cold fusion and stuff that we're currently looking at now. I mean, 100 years after the fact, when we should be already using it everywhere.
Right. And yeah, so just for the people who you mentioned the Schumann resonance. That's so what happened was whenever they finally reverse engineered this thing and powered it up, they were all, perplexed at where it was drawing its energy from, where it was drawing its power from. And that's what inspired Schumann to research where is this drawing its energy from? And that's where he discovered the resonance of the earth. So it was named after him for that reason. But it was all because they were testing this free energy is, what led him to the discovery of the Schumann resonance.
Right. And that probably goes back to the energy grid of the planet and, ley lines in certain places where there is this energy. And that's probably why the ancients built on top of these certain places, because who knows, even they maybe had these spacecraft being used and needing to be powered up at certain locations. And the pyramids supposedly were kind of those energy sources too.
Right. And something else I'm getting ready to do a deep dive on is the Venusian involvement, people from Venus, helping the Germans reverse engineer as well. It was a whole separate thing aside from the Vril that I've come up with in the Genesis for the Space Race book. So I'm going to create a video on that. But we had 2 different things going on here and 2 different groups helping the Germans so far that I can tell. But I'm sure there was a lot more than that. But anyway, continue. I know we have a lot to get through.
Yep. So mind control, well, that's obviously what we're talking about now with the MK Ultra hearings and a lot of this stuff, but it all stems back from the Nazis for the most part. Himmler was the authority on the metaphysical side, apparently in telepathy, mind control, and using ayahuasca to open dimensional doors. So they were doing all that way back in the day, and allowed for telepathic transmissions of message, and it was seized by CIA and NSA after World War II. And it goes back to like remote viewing, mediumship, all that type of stuff that, we're kind of now it's all become more mainstream. After World War II, Project Paperclip imported all the Nazis here to the U.S. Werner von Braun was headed the NASA program, obviously, and obtained up to 30, according to our grandfather, 30 anti-gravity systems at the same time. This kickstarted the top secret Cosmos unit focused on the electromagnetic propulsion. So even all these clearances that we ended up getting came from the technology we got from the Germans. And they kind of actually say that in Wikipedia when I looked up why they created, Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force and the senior Master Sergeant, Chief Master Sergeant, those highest ranks in the Air Force were created due to the technology explosion out of World War II. They actually say that, but they don't say it's UFO related, but now you understand how to relate. Yeah.
Right.
And that's why our grandfather was like streamlined so fast up to Chief Master Sergeant. He was one of the fastest. I mean, normally it takes over 16 years. He did it within 15 years or so. or usually it's 20 years actually. So anyway, even though if you even get to that rank, but even though Germans surrendered, the Third Reich never did, and we have plenty of stories about that. And I don't have to go in those details. In 1941, large supply ship Atlantis could carry Hannibus and RFCs. So now we're getting to the bigger ships, like the motherships. The cigar-shaped mothership Andromeda could travel to other planets with 7 Hannibus inside by 1942. And by end of the war, Germans, with Japan's help, may have completed a one-way mission to Mars in a Hannibus 5. And that's what he had intelligence information about. They're used for interdimensional travel where warp speed is needed. Warp 4 would be 4 times the speed of light, for instance. So he describes that in the book. And all these things he kind of touches on. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, now I just lost where. Oh, yeah. So David Hatcher Childress actually has a whole book series on the German flying saucer program. If anyone is interested to learn more, it's not just one person talking about it. There's so much information out there at this point. So just throwing it out there for anyone who might want to do a little deeper dive into that.
Yeah. I think it's just amazing that you'll see so many dots, key connects that like now there's tons of books out there on all these specific topics, but he kind of just tries to hit a little bit here and there. And sometimes he just throws a paragraph in the book and you're like, wait, did I read that right? Like it's just like he had the information there some way, one way or another. But he talked about lenticular reentry vehicles, lenticular crafts that would be able to cloak themselves in, and that's why you see some of these clouds shaped that way. A lot of times these are actually craft, and they can use the dew point to basically get the temperature just right, so that then they create the clouds, basically become camouflaged. Of course, there's other invisibility stealth type of crafts, but that was one method that could be used. And he said the military knows of 17 to 18 types of ET craft in various shape, mass, and propulsion system, back at least when he wrote the book and when he had the clearance for that.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is just like matter of fact. So, and that's the thing that's interesting. You'll see where he what statements he makes and what types of information he states that you can find and reference in books, and then some you don't. It's just like him stating it very matter of factly. So that's also interesting. Yeah, that I kind of picked up on. So now we're into the deep underground bases, and he knew Phil Schneider. He says he was friends with Phil Schneider. I remember going to Taos as a kid, and that was one of the clearest kind of memories I have, is seeing this VHS tape that he put in and had a couple of people at the house to watch, and it was Phil Schneider talking, one of his talks, just like probably this one right here. And the whole chapter is dedicated to Phil Schneider and what he talks about the deep underground networks, the shuttle networks, the subterranean highway, the subglobal system is what they call it. And you're traveling at supersonic speeds. It's like vacuum tube technology, at least originally. That's basically what it is, maglev technology. Phil Schneider was a part of the drilling geologist, a part used for how fast they could drill and make not only the tunnels but the underground bases, and that goes into the whole Dulce conflict. And one of the conflicts that happened because of Phil Schneider and his team kind of just accidentally stumbling upon a cavern, an underground base that was already inhabited by these, whether they were extraterrestrials or just beings that have lived underground for a very long time. Either way, we've got a mixture of that. And so he's claimed 129 bases as of 1989. They're all throughout the U.S. and they go all the way across the oceans too now. He mentioned the Pine Gap, Australia is a big one that connecting way down there. So many others that I'm not going to go through, but he mentioned the military budget, 68% is affected by the black budget. It's roughly 1.3 trillion every 2 years. And that was back in mid 90s when he stated that. So imagine just what it is. And this all ties back to even 9/11, when Donald Rumsfeld said the day before 9/11, September 10th, he stated there's however many trillions of dollars missing from the U.S. budget, or, when they were trying to figure out where that money was. And it's like, well,
2.3. Yeah, it's 2.3 trillion missing.
2.3 trillion. Yeah. and that was 2001. And then 9/11 happens, and then Pentagon's hit at just the right place to destroy all the records of that information of where that money was going.
And then even during COVID too, there was like 6.8 trillion that went missing.
Yep.
Right. Oh, and then he states that my grandfather said, they were disappointed and disillusioned by the images they got back of bodies of the American GIs that were stuffed with the drugs from Vietnam, and I guess they both, were aware of things like that. He says that during Vietnam, the code word for ET craft was enemy helicopters. And Phil Schneider talked so much because he knew he was going to die. He didn't care because he had cancer from the event that happened where he was struck by radiation type of laser or whatever it happened to be. That was what he claimed, but he had physical proof from his, like half of his thumb or finger was missing, huge scars on his chest. And he was, at the end of the day, he was suicided and killed. It was obvious with a piano wire, and they still called it a suicide. It's insane, but
yeah, there's a good documentary on Prime. I forgot what it's called off the top of my head, but it really dives into the Phil Schneider testimony and does it justice. It's very great information.
It is. I've seen it. It's amazing. Yeah.
I think that is a huge part of this whole disclosure thing and the whole underground world and the inner earth type of stuff that kind of stems from that. And Tyler, you've done a lot about that recently. And then even going into Antarctica, like all of this ties together. I mean, we'll see. Maybe I'll touch on some more at the end, but we'll keep going. To avoid the mass and wave particleization, he did a whole kind of a chapter based on that and explaining what that was. And waves are non-physical realities, not limited by the confines of this or any other universe, which must be converted into particles in order to have mass. So waves to mass, or energy to mass, and vice versa. And we can do this ourselves with the pineal gland and the human brain. It's what we call the third eye, but we have the ability to convert the waves into particles and create manifest reality. Basically, it goes back to the holographic belief system. It's the science behind mind states such as produced in meditation. So he would explain all this, and the military was well aware of things like this, and it stems into like Stranger Things and to Montauk. And in time travel, it really goes back to the Philadelphia experiment. If nobody knows that, there's a movie on it. And I referenced that in a list of all the movies that even our grandfather mentioned as we were kids. Like, if you want to know the truth, go see this movie. And Philadelphia experiment was one of those movies about the ship that was transported, that not only just physically transported, but also I think at that time, maybe there was some time dilation in that, but they knew the passengers on the ship, there's Al Bielek and James, Duncan Cameron, who were both transported. Al Bielek claimed to have transported way into the future after that experience and then came back. And that's what that whole movie talks about too. That gets very complicated, but talked to, go ahead.
There's another movie called The Final Countdown. It came out in 1980. It's about a very similar thing, a Navy destroyer that is out in the ocean, and it accidentally travels through a portal, which they thought was a storm, and they end up going back in time prior to Pearl Harbor, and they realize that they've gone back in time, and they try to stop the attack. But John Warner IV, who we've interviewed a number of times, he said his father took him to see that movie when it premiered, and there was a lot of Navy brass there, and they were all going to the premiere to approve the film as a recruitment film. So there's a lot of truth to that movie. It matter of factly tells you that these craft were going through portals, or I'm sorry, ships, Navy destroyers, aircraft carriers. They were going through portals, and they didn't understand it at first, according to the movie. Like, they accidentally stumbled upon one of these anomalies, and they ended up back in time. But it's a fascinating movie. I actually think it's really good. It has Martin Sheen as the main character.
Okay. I got to see that.
That's very telling that they use that as a recruitment film, and then couple that with like William Cooper's story. He was in the Navy, out on a ship, and saw these UFOs one after another coming up, flying out of the ocean, going back down without making a sound or a splash.
Right.
and flipping around, doing all these crazy things. And he said they were all threatened and said everything you can imagine if you say a word of this, and you had to sign NDAs and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I knew at that moment, at least the U.S. Navy knew about this stuff, clearly knew very well about this stuff, and didn't want anyone else to know. It was a very, very tightly kept secret.
Right.
And that was in
So
like the 80s, at least the
Right.
early 80s, maybe, or something like that.
Yep. Bill Cooper's a big part of this. I talked to him briefly. I didn't talk to him. I spoke about him in one of the slides earlier, in that our grandfather knew him too and saw him and would go to lectures. I guess and what Bill Cooper did for the Navy is kind of basically what our grandfather did for the Air Force as far as intelligence, and they would supposedly they'd share information and things like that.
Yeah.
But, Bill Cooper, also another one, that suicided based on all that he was revealing and predicting the 9/11, Osama bin Laden thing as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But back to this part, I'll just keep for particularization. What he claimed our grandfather said is the principle behind time travel, and that whole thing with the Philadelphia experiment did kind of tie back to the portal technology and teleportation and that aspect, and how they used it in Montauk later on with kids, because obviously kids are more pure and have those abilities really aren't what do you say, like aren't drained or aren't kind of, all those abilities are still very fresh, and over time that can wear off, especially with just our programming of reality and being institutionalized with certain ways society is. But kids can tap into that very strongly. And so Montauk, the Stranger Things, is really kind of basically a true story. And funny to note, our grandfather said Montauk lasted until 1988, and I always thought he just got that wrong. But according to James Rank, I luckily got to talk to him the last time we interviewed him, or one of the few times we did, he said he was a part of Montauk 2.0, and it was in Brookhaven's lab, and it lasted till 1988. So it was the one thing that corroborated what our grandfather said, and I had no other way of knowing that, really. So
Well,
Right.
I thought that was pretty interesting. So to tie back all this again, I mean, he really tried to hone in on the fact that we have so much potential within our human, our physicality, within our human nature. It's innate within us. Our cells are archives for everything that ever was or within the universe. Our cells contain that encoded history within our DNA. We are made up of everything. So it's all the whole fractal idea. And remember that I mentioned he worked under Benoit Mandelbrot, who created the Mandelbrot set and fractal geometry and all of that way back in the day. So it makes sense why he would claim that, or assuming that's true, that would make perfect sense as far as dealing with technology like this. So it's possible to think something into existence to actually form our own physical reality. He says humans are capable of transforming waves to particles because of the pineal gland. Humans can create actually organized energy waves, manipulate mass, create human reality. So he goes on to say that, and more about traveling through time and space. Maybe that's also part of what the Montauk project was. That's what he's alluding to, because we know that's what they were doing with the chair that they reverse engineered to then have these kids kind of, and as according to a lot of people, they would pick up just homeless people or whoever they could, and these people would be caught in these time programs where they would just disappear and sometimes never come back. So who knows how many missing children we we had in the programs because of that, and just a lot of stuff that wasn't obviously it wasn't very good for kids, and a lot of abuse that went on through the programs like this.
right.
Yeah. So, and then we are apparently one of the few species that with this pineal gland, with this capability, and that's why the ETs are studying us and find us so fascinating, and why we are the center of attention right now in a lot of ways, because we are so powerful, and those maybe even nefarious forces and beings know how much potential we have, and they actually are scared of us because of what we can do. So there's no reason for us to fear or live in fear and feel like we are these lowly beings and creatures, because we are so much more. And so that's important to note. And now to the Wing Makers was like one of the final chapters he put in the book. And I'm just trying to summarize as best as I can, but this is a can of worms to open up. And Tyler and Aaron, we've done many shows about the Wing Makers, and I know it's something you guys are into. I don't know how much we need to delve into this, but, you know, this is the recap. You know, the 7-time capsules, they found the first one in New Mexico near Chaco Canyon. Supposedly, the wingmakers are us from the future. A human race are us from the future, and they're coming back to have these capsules activated or found at the right time to then activate the human race and use certain types of language, use philosophy, artwork, music, all these things to kind of just activate us and maybe activate our DNA in a way to awaken and become aware of who we are and our rightful place among, you know, the rest of the universe, and go on a positive timeline. That's their message at the end of the day, and not to fall into a trap of, there's a lot of deception as far as whatever, if it's even just religion. There's so many traps to get us into uh thinking, you know, one side or one part of the puzzle of like of the whole existence of our existence of reality of what it is, but there's so many more layers to it. And the wingmakers is a huge rabbit hole of philosophy. And Dr. Neruda was the defector of the ACIO group, of the Labyrinth group, and supposedly that's how this information came out. 15 was the name of the head of the Labyrinth group and the head of the ACIO by, I guess, 1963. And so he really, yeah, he was in control of trying to use the technology, which was the main piece of technology was blank slate technology, which related to time travel. And that was the whole point of working even with these other ET beings within the Labyrinth group to perfect this technology and keep it for themselves, hopefully for the right reasons, but to not let it fall into the wrong hands. Maybe there's all sorts of parts to the story.
Right.
So that's kind of trying to sum it up very fast. They claim that they seeded the concept of the internet for the purpose of developing this global culture. So that was one thing that was stated in the paper. This paper on the right is like the memo that was given to the ACIO, and our grandfather stamped that saying that this is authentic. And maybe he had seen that, I'm sure probably had crossed paths with that document before it was available through the website in the early 2000s.
Right.
Uh,
You
and
know, oh, go ahead. Finish your thought first.
The only thing I was going to say left was that in that document, there was a prediction by 2023, the internet will be the focal point of this new global culture, and it will become the gateway to a connected intergalactic digital nervous system. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much right on point.
Yeah.
I just want to mention there's a number of people. I've seen people share posts about the wingmakers on X, which is like the town square of the world, as Elon Musk calls it. But you know, you get a lot of eyes on content like this, and largely a lot of people think it's bullshit, and they think it's been debunked, and you can't really trust the source. Whatever, you know how people are, but the fact that your grandfather put a stamp on this and is even felt it important enough to add as the final chapter in his book, I think says says it all.
Says a lot.
Yeah, I think that says a lot. I mean, so that makes me and anyone who's interested in diving into the wingmakers, I feel like it makes it a little more compelling to deep dive into. You're not wasting your time on some hoax, like there is something really to it.
Yeah. Yep. And this goes right into, it will go into in a second, into talking about the ACI with Jessica Morocco and Peter, the insider. This was just one other slide I had that I thought was worth sharing to show kind of like develop the levels of security or clearance levels. And I think this came from a website. The guy that claims that I don't know, he claims he's like even part of the Anunnaki. Who's the guy that does a lot with this wingmaker stuff? I can't remember, but Drago got me involved with it.
Okay, I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, he's a musician. He's a musician, and then he claimed he was like getting in contact with these members, whatever it was. But I think this comes from him, so I don't want to take credit for it. But it's showing you the U.S. government, NSA on one level, CIA, NSA, and then on next security level is the Special Projects Lab and other military high compartmentalized groups apparently in the private sector, and then ACIO goes one level above that, and then just above that is the Labyrinth group, where we're where 15 is working with these other beings and blank slate technology. And who knows? I mean, and that blank slate technology, one is about mind wiping technology, and that's one way they used it. And then it's also about time travel. There's two aspects to it. Um, Even Johann Fritz or Will Nutter explained that a little bit. We talked to him too.
Right. And what I think is interesting about that optical disc that has the 8,000 pages of documents that basically lay out our history, if you read the updated Wingmakers website, which there's controversy there, but they claim that, for years they didn't even know how to access the disk. And eventually they brought somebody in who figured out that it was voice activated, and it was voice activated through a Sumerian phrase, basically a language that we don't use anymore, an ancient language. And they spoke this phrase, and it was able to access. They were able to access it. So whether or not there's any truth to that, it's interesting because it makes me question or wonder about other artifacts around the world that might seem insignificant when we find them and we don't know how to turn them on, but potentially just like a Stargate, like Jerry Wills talks about, it could be voice activated, and you just have to know the proper phrase to get in.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And you have to be on the right frequency, the right phrase. That goes all tied into actually the Radu Sinamar series and the Romanian Sphinx, all that stuff.
Right.
Very interesting. All that is tied to like the barriers that are there, that are energetic barriers that you have to be able to cross through. JP talks about that. So
Right.
there's got to be something to that, right?
Well, even Dina, who has channeled your grandfather as a medium, essentially,
Right.
she, in one of her notebooks, because she let me look at him, she talked about seeing him potentially showing her, like, putting his hand on a cave wall.
That's
And
right.
and specifically maybe even saying something and then going through that portal. So, there could be something really to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And even these and Jessica and Peter, the insider that I mentioned, they are supposedly they are part of the ACIO, and they have their own website now that's out. That I don't think this existed when my grandfather talked about it, and I don't think any of this came public yet. But he was the only one. Like many things, he was the only one, but he was the only one to state that ACIO was an organization, and that they, if you paid your dues and you follow the rules, then you're allowed to benefit from their and have access to their information. So uh, it was very real to him. This is back in 2000, and now there's so much more talk about it. We have people now that are supposedly part of the group and sharing so much information. And my brother and I went to them and asked about our grandfather, and the Wingmakers, we went through a whole series of going through each painting of the Wingmakers, which you had seen in the other slide, but explaining what those were, interpreting that. Peter the Insider is a very interesting guy. He will never show his face, obviously for certain reasons. He's actually from Slovakia, which is interesting, and the ties to that. But because I'm actually part Slovakian too, but yeah, he's a 12th division, where Jessica's the 6th division, and that's where that term 15 comes from, because 15 was the only one at that level of clearance. Supposedly, our grandfather was a part of this organization, according to Peter, and according to even to from Johann Will Nutter, also, who had access to the SSP files. I'll just say, to make it clear, that Will Nutter and what he had access to within the SSP is completely different from what Peter has as far as his files, and the sharing of information. None of that is related. So I want to make that perfectly clear. And those were two completely different sources that we got this information from. So
Okay.
yeah, and so the ACO supposedly was created way back in 1950. To back engineer ET tech, and even the NSA and the CIA, all of their creation was stemmed from ET technology, and knowing we had to deal with this one way or another. So it just became more groups that made it more highly classified.
And here we are in 2026. We don't quite know what it is, but the technology or the who's visiting, that narrative they give us.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're still stuck in asking questions, "Did Roswell happen?" and stuff. It's really annoying.
Are ETs even here and
Right.
real? It's still
Are we alone in the universe?
right,
Oh, let's think about it more.
right, right.
Yeah. In fact, like I went to NASA's site recently just to see what they were saying about life elsewhere, and that's basically how they're still presenting it. Are we alone? Could you know?
Yeah. It's so frustrating and it's so sad that that's kind of but there's still a lot of hope based on what's happening, right? So,
Yeah,
um, it's getting the rest of us kinda to where we're at without completely causing a breakdown in society, and I
we're
think that's
we're we're going around the gatekeepers is the way I see
yeah,
it.
yeah,
They're becoming it more irrelevant by the day because there is the awakening happening, whether they like it or not. They can't do anything about it, but
right,
they're
right,
trying, and they're trying to steer the narrative and create fear and chaos and all of that.
right,
But it's becoming more and more irrelevant by the day because we're waking up in mass right now.
Right.
yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So I'll go quickly through this because this is just to show he was a professor. He got it, he did get a degree just so he could teach, philosophy and teach the Rancher book in particular and anything about UFOs. So like he encompassed like this whole other realm that as a flight instructor and one of these high levels within the military, then he decides this is his path and what he's really, should be doing as he's retired. Um, which says something in itself. And the Rancher book is a very fascinating set of material. And I mean, it's like a Bible in itself. It's got so much that I've never been able to read through it all. I've barely scratched the
Yeah.
surface. It talks about Jesus. It talks about the whole universe. It talks about our planet and how we got here, where we're from.
Yeah.
Supposedly it's
It's
information.
it's
Yeah,
dense. It's like an esoteric Bible. You
Right.
nailed it. It's very dense and there's so
right.
much in there.
A
Yeah.
and I've never read it, but I have heard recently somebody claim, and this could be in the book too, and you guys might know this, but the Urantia is actually what they call Earth. Other
That's right.
yeah,
That's
other
right.
stars, other planets, groups, they refer to Earth as Urantia. So it's the
That's
Earth
right.
book.
It's
Right.
the Earth book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tied to the Lyricist teachings, a lot of similarities, so much similarity, and that's tied to the Wingmaker site, and that's why I put this here just to show you, and just some examples of they talk about the central universe, the super universe, and all the universes around it. There's 7 super universes around the grand universe, similar to the 7th universe, the central race from the Wingmakers in that series. They're called form builders. There's a lot of ways you can kind of look at this, but you'll start to pick it up. We're apparently I think we're in the Orvonton, the 7th universe created by Father, Son, and Spirit, according to the Rancher book. And it's just fascinating stuff. And again, way too much to delve into here. And other ways to interpret that, the talks of like, say, paradise and paradise being that level 1 or the center, and then all these other levels that go out from there. Um, there's a ties also in the Urantia and how this was and what David Wilcock talked about and his insider and how each, planet has a number. And my brother pointed this out because in the Urantia book, there is a number tied to the planet or within our part of the, solar system or universe, and it's similar to what that insider was saying. So it almost gives proof to the Urantia book, and what it was saying is very much how it works. And,
Yeah.
each planet has its own, like, IP address almost to then access and teleport or, travel to instantaneously or however you get there, It's the yeah, it's the marker and to let you know how to get from point A to point B, right?
Just
Right. And
like
supposedly that's where we got the IP in the first place from that, not the other way around.
That's
And
interesting.
the
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the last 3 digits of Earth are 606, Mars is 605. So each planet in
Right.
the solar system is like 1 digit away. And then each section of that IP, like dot whatever, is like a greater area in space that it's covering kind of thing.
Yep, yep.
kinda like
Yeah,
how they would dial in the Stargate to
Yeah.
get yeah.
And that's exactly, it's total disclosure.
Which
that's
Um,
kind
of that.
that's where I'm getting at. Like, these
Yeah.
movies I saw as a kid and a lot that my grandfather talked about, but it goes right back to what movies did you see that like stood out in your mind that was like, there's gotta be I like was just drawn to it. I didn't know why as a kid. I was like, this is cool, but I feel like there's something to the story. And Stargate was one of those movies for sure as a kid.
Right.
And now, you see all this talk about the Stargates and people bring it up all the time now, but um, that was definitely disclosure back in the 90s. And our grandfather mentioned a lot of these movies, maybe not that one in particular, but I knew that was important. He was a big fan of the X-Files, obviously. He talked about Close Encounters of the Third Kind in his book and how every one of Steven Spielberg movies is paid for by whatever agency or government, and he will never lose money. And if he loses money on any movie, they will pay him for it. Like our grandfather said, all this. And so, lo and behold, what's about to come out in a few days is called Disclosure Day with Steven Spielberg. Now, it's interesting when you hear him. He was interviewed about the movie, and back and when he's talking about Close Encounters, he was like, "Wouldn't it be great one day if we all, could, think of this being a possible reality of all of us actually, coming in agreement that like this could be our future if we let it be, or that we'd have this technology, whatever it might be, interact with other beings." And then in this interview that he did, he said basically now it needs to be known that everything in this movie is the truth. Like this is basically we're at the point where everything happening and what he's saying in the movie is where we're at today.
Right.
And the
And
rest of it.
and that's revolutionary in the sense that they're adding that interview clip into the movie trailer, the latest trailer for the movie, and they're presenting it as a fact. They're not even presenting it as a sci-fi film. They're like, basically, wouldn't it be great? Isn't it great that we all get to walk away from this movie now knowing that all of this is true?
Right.
So they're
Right.
just telling you. And ironically, as we're talking, I just got a text from my friend that said, "Oh my God, the new Stargate series that was supposed to happen just got canceled."
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So I
Right.
haven't looked into that at all. It's just a text message, but that's very upsetting because I was really excited for that.
me too. Oh, it's a bummer.
Wow. I wonder
There's
why. It's
too much
interesting.
truth. Maybe
Yeah.
they're yeah.
They probably saw a pilot and they're like, "This is way too much."
They're like, "This is way we can't have this.
Right.
Cut it." Yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
why.
they might have to go back and redesign it and based on, I mean, of current events probably tells a lot of what they're gonna do next, I think, too, with those
Right.
kind of things. But I'll keep going. I know we got a lot, and this was just kind of like a intermission in my presentation to go through some of these that are fascinating. We talked about Philadelphia Experiment. Fire in the Sky was Travis Walton case where he was abducted, and our grandfather said everything was basically true to the best of account, like as a documentary. He was saying that really happened. He said we are basically we have the technology of Star Wars and Star Trek. It's there. It's all the stuff at the cosmos level. We are dealing with on that level with other beings and the technology, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I'll talk about Stanley Kubrick a little bit later, but he came up with 2001: Space Odyssey. Obviously, was like paramount in kind of just an idea of space in general, and there's ties to the moon landing and NASA, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But Contact was when I went to the theater with my grandfather to see Contact. He was super excited about that movie. He knew that was the disclosure in a lot of ways, and that had to do with the start, like a teleportation device, more or less, and going to another planet. And then so he was like, "This is very important." Independence Day was kind of silly and dumb, and so was Men in Black, the way they portrayed it. But Men in Black, our grandfather claimed he was a part of those groups. Whether he was actually a Men in Black, you can technically call him that, but he was like one of the first of those that would say you didn't see what you think you saw, and then they would start to threaten you. The next group would threaten you. The next group would, if you didn't stop talking, they would get rid of you. So, and
Right.
they were assassins. Yeah. Um, yeah, we talk about that in the documentary a little bit, and there's plenty more to be said on all those topics. But Interstellar, I just threw in there. Oh, before I get to that, Abyss was like one of my favorite as a kid, and that was about the underwater type of bases and ET groups. And now we're getting more and more of that disclosure right now too. So I felt like all of that was very well like part of giving us the truth, in these movies. I was drawn to a lot of those movies. But Interstellar, I was drawn to that too. And the reason, and that's a newer movie, our grandfather didn't know about that, but I feel very connected to my grandfather in the way that the daughter, and the father was connecting to his daughter, and even through the books in the bookshelf in her room, and he was trying to connect to her. I feel like my grandfather's done that with all the books that I've read, and out of his collection, and knowing what to read next. I feel like he's still around, and he's guiding me even to make certain things within this presentation. I think I was guided. I mean, I don't know if it was him, but I feel like I get help every now and then to know where to look next.
And you know what's interesting too is when we premiered our documentary here in Sedona, we rented out a movie theater and premiered it
Oh yeah.
and sold out the theater. And the specific part where your grandfather comes up, where you come up, there was a weird like glitch, and this like warning comes up on the screen. It's like I don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
anyway, it popped up in the middle of the movie, and I like run out of the theater to go talk to the lady, and she's like, this has never happened before. I don't know why or how this is. I'm so sorry. And basically, she had to, like, pause the movie quickly and then, like, remove it and start it again in the middle of, like, the theater, right? But a
Yeah.
few people there both sensed that it was him, like, his energy was there, like, he was in the theater while that part was showing, and, potentially that, electromagnetic disturbance is what glitched the film at that time. I don't
Wow.
know, but it was definitely. I mean, if you don't believe in coincidences, it was not a coincidence, you know?
Yeah, yeah, she's like, "This has never happened before. I have no idea what this is or why it happened." And it was right at
Right.
that part, so that makes
Right.
sense. Probably was him. Yeah.
Inside, yeah, you told me that is so fascinating, and Dina, who was the medium, one of the people that really we've been in contact with her the most, and she's been messaging me and my brother for it's been what 2 years since the conference, Journey to Truth conference, where we met her, and she started to get these downloads from my grandfather, and ever since it's been like on and off, and now apparently more's coming in as we speak, and I'll get that in a minute. I'm not quite there yet, but we'll talk about that. Oh, well, yeah, these are just movies. He mentions The Agency. There was the original. This was a newer version, but there's an original before he released the book, and he mentions that for the CIA disclosing what's going on there. The Mr. Robot, if you haven't seen that series, I think it's a pretty amazing series. And there's disclosure as far as like the hacking type of stuff, and like the controllers that are using, surveillance, mass surveillance, and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it goes into that wide-eyed conspiracy theory stuff, but there's a lot of truth to that, and even the main enemy at the end is China, and and it's interesting how they play on that.
Well,
Lost. Yeah, go ahead.
if you want, at some point, since you mentioned China, it might be a good point to play that clip from your grandfather as well, talking about China.
Oh, sure.
Eh,
Let's do it.
but
Let's do it.
you can finish the slide, or do you want me to play
Yeah,
that?
let me do that. Let me finish this out, and maybe that's a good place to go back to, because yeah, this ties into a lot of what he was talking about. So after I get through these two slides, we'll do that. But a lot of other connections like Lost. To me, it was just kind of a strange movie, but or a strange series. Everybody was probably getting lost watching it and like, what the heck is this? Why are we watching this still? And I just couldn't turn it off. I had to keep watching to see what's going on. But if you go back and look at it, I rewatched it, and there's a lot of stuff about timelines, timeline manipulation, a lot of MK Ultra stuff too, and like, who knows? But that whole thing about the timelines to time travel, getting people, how they were all somehow interconnected and whatnot in their lives, and up to even like using teleportation technology, and the island having electromagnetic type of interferences, and it actually has a station called the Swan Station, and I'll get into why that matters, because out of all the out of all the things we've heard, Peter the Insider says, me and my brother are tied to a group called Swan, and it's, you have a lot of the SSP whistleblowers coming out. Me and my brother can't claim to be a part of any of that because we don't have the recall for it. So I'm never going to claim I'm a part of it, but I'll just state what other people have said, and they say we are a part of it. And the Swan is something that very few people apparently have been involved with, but me, my brother, and apparently Jessica Morocco of the ACIO are involved, and Peter's gone into that pretty a lot, and we're going to actually do a summary of all that Peter shared with us in a new post coming up soon. So anyway, Fringe is also very much tied to the just all of the type of almost like the new X-Files, where it talks about a lot of it is the mind control stuff, but so many things. I know, Tyler, you told me about this too, and I was like, yeah, I had to go rewatch it. It also goes in the timelines and all the technology that they probably have been using for so long. But every episode has something that's relevant and probably true disclosure, I would say, about what's
Yeah,
going on.
I would say the big thing with Fringe is the parallel Earth. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Man in the High Castle talks about it. Fringe. I just watched the interview the other day on Mr. Gateway podcast with Justin Abraham talking about essentially the cabal resides in a parallel dimension when they pull the strings from another reality, essentially, to manipulate this reality. So I think there's a lot of truth to that, and they've been telling us in ways like this.
And I like that in Fringe, there's even disclosure of they have this technology to view what's in the parallel reality from from this reality. And then they hold it up and you can see on the other side, like what exists in that reality.
It's literally,
and we've heard that from other people like Daryl Jane, and other people where they have this viewing technology they can see into a different.
Like looking glass.
Literally a looking glass. Yeah. Like it's
literally a looking glass.
A glass pane that they look through and it shows you the other dimension. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, let's move along because I know there's a lot to get through.
I know. Yeah, there's a lot. So, and the only other one that's like The Peripheral, I would definitely watch because it's about time travel actually, and using video games as a way for them to create these super soldiers, whatever the assets you want to say, and go do missions and then come back and they don't. And who knows? It could wipe your mind of it completely. And that's kind of tied to what Peter says. My brother, have been involved in going into future realities or timelines and helping in some missions and coming back. And of course, how do we know that's existing? But that Peripheral is talking about it. And there's another form of disclosure. The Halo is obviously a big form of disclosure. Stranger Things, we know, Umbrella Academy even, and it ties to like, they start to tie into JFK assassination at the end and MJ-12 associated with that. It's just fascinating, all these little ties and like little nods, like tip of the hat, like, hey, if you know what to look for, you'll see the signs, right?
Right.
Exactly.
And then we go into even more about movies. And what do you think is all related in all of these? What's kind of the theme, I guess, more or less, besides say Enemy of the State, but I mean, a lot of the themes you can kind of see.
Some a super soldier type of enhanced being,
Yep. Our ties to like basically the computer AI and super soldier and timelines, even timeline manipulation with like the Adjustment Bureau. The Matrix, obviously, you know what that is, but it all starts to tie into super soldiers, even cloning and those programs, how they manipulate us, use us, mind wipe us. I mean, we've been used and abused, I'm sure, so many ways, and these are just showing you how it's been done. The only one that my grandfather mentioned in this is The Enemy of the State, and I thought that was just a powerful movie. I'll say my favorite scene in that movie is when they're escaping the building, that he had his Faraday cage and his like bunker of this NSA guy, and Gene Hackman's the NSA guy. They leave the building. Gene Hackman blows up the building as they're getting the car chase scene, getting out of there. Will Smith's like, "Why did you blow up the building? What the hell's going on?" He's like, "I blew up the building." Will Smith's like, "Why the hell did you do that?" He's like, "Because you made a phone call." It's like, I mean,
I remember that.
That was one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it's just telling you like just little things like that. They can find you. They can track you no matter what. And even with the license plates and all that. Interesting note about Gene Hackman. Did you guys hear about the thing under his house and when they found him and his wife in his house dead? Like, I don't know if it's true, but do you notice Gene Hackman's always been in like these conspiracy movies and like kind of the guy that just always like has some answers and unknown stuff. And he's just kind of like, yeah, I know about this and that. It's like holding the secrets, right? Well, apparently he had this huge underground, who knows, facility, like, and it goes back hundreds of years apparently. And I don't know, they never explain what it is because it's still classified apparently. I don't know.
Right.
Super fascinating, but that's just a tie that's just so out there. But our grandfather knew how powerful the NSA was. That's the point of that movie. Um, Now to this disclosure project, and of course, I can just briefly say that, yeah, I tried to meet with Dr. Greer during the series premiere, and I get answers from him. I wanted to actually get the actual original recordings of our grandfather from the disclosure project. I wasn't successful. At the same time, David Wilcock, not Doctor, but David Wilcock was there at the what is it called? The after event, whatever. They had the after party.
The May 10th, he was at, so everyone knows about the May 9th. He was at the May 10th, which was more private, VIP,
Right.
disclosure project, right?
Oh, yeah, so that's talking about 2001 Disclosure Project. David Wilcock was there, and he did
Oh, you're talking
speak.
about the serious,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
sorry, I'm
But
sorry.
they're related. They're related. So yeah, if people didn't know that, David Wilcock was at Disclosure Project 2001, and he did get to talk to all the whistleblowers there. But I didn't know that, and I met him at the series premiere, the after party. I met David Wilcock, and he was talking to other people. I had just enough time to like introduce myself or just say hi, thank you for everything you do. This was 2013, and I obviously knew him, read his book, Source Field Investigations, knew he was up and coming, and his involvement with Project Camelot, Carrie Cassidy. I mean, huge. I mean, this guy, he was already a star in my eyes, but I didn't know he talked to my grandfather in 2001, so I couldn't have asked him at the time, "Hey, what did my grandfather is so and so, and what did he say to you?" So it was so unfortunate. So fast forward to 2019, I'm at Contact in the Desert. Me and my brother are there. We get to see him and have him sign our grandfather's book. And we like, do you remember him? He says, yes. I do remember your grandfather. And we did just, we got to talk, and it's like, nice meeting you. But we didn't get to get contact info to have a discussion about it. So then lo and behold, like just last year, I'm talking to David Nino Rodriguez, and he says, I can get you in contact with David. So David knew we were trying to contact him. At least I was trying to, and talk about our grandfather. And of course, sadly, he passed away just recently. And note, it's so funny though that it's so not funny, but that it's 25 years almost to the day, not only of David Wilcock passing in 2001, but then kind of just this little epiphany I have of this new information from my grandfather about the AI stuff. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know, this 25-year mark. I think there's a reason too why it's ramping up, and maybe again there's a deadline. There's like a timeline that says we have to start revealing stuff that the government does anyway, and the people are ready for it. But it's taken 25 years to get to this point.
Right.
So that's where we're at. And Emery Smith I got to see him in 2019, and I thought, he might have more details about our grandfather. I recently have been able to message him just a little bit, and he says, no, I don't really have those details. And I feel like, was I in another timeline when we were sitting together and you told me that you had some information to share? But I don't know. So hopefully I can come, we can get to the bottom. Maybe there's something that's relevant that he still has a piece of the puzzle. Who knows?
Right. And actually, before we get into the next slide, I'm going to play that video that you shared with me about China, because, I mean, he was sharing a lot of fascinating stuff. In fact, I actually think, have you released those full interviews like on your channel so people can watch them?
We have, and it's you got to go back in time, but it's there. It's all there, and maybe we'll release them and post them so people can find them easily. So, yeah.
Yeah, or even just share them again on social media so people can find them. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let me play this one.
There's a lot of other things happening if you've done it that they don't tell you, that they're going to have to reveal to you pretty soon, because they've lost control over the nations that they did control through petroleum. One nation is China. One thing your government fears more than anything else is to march 6 billion people in any direction. We learned that in Korea. The Chinese did not ride the Korean trucks. They marched. Just like in World War II. They moved their factories and machinery and everything to the mountains to get away from the Japanese, put them all back together, and successfully sustained themselves throughout the war. So what force do we have with air against China? None. So that's the reason our government fears China more than they fear any other government. China don't listen to us. We learned how to do that in Korea. We learned from the Chinese. They brainwashed. It's very simple now. You don't have to do anything. You go get shot. You'll get more shots than any country in the world. All you have to do is have the right thing put in by any doctor, especially in the military. You got to go all the time. Thought we're going to get tetanus shot. Well, maybe it's not a tetanus shot. Then maybe you go to your civilian doctor. Well, I'm depressed. I need a shot. Well, maybe you get what you think you're getting, and maybe you don't. In the future, you probably won't get what you think you're getting. Now, I want you to ask what I've told you so far. Is it going to make any difference in your life or more? Now, Harold, Paul, Pat, they could tell you things about your government. You better wake up, better change, get interested, changing your life.
It is only through public demand that the veil of secrecy can be lifted. The entire subject of UFOs should be open to a thorough study with public involvement. The Black Project should be viewed as an identifiable misuse of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, of we the people and by the people. It is not a time to be fearful, but a time to be bold.
That was it. And that was my brother talking at the end that was quoting from the book. So, yeah. That was
Nice. And I would say that a lot of things have changed with the situation with China since that was recorded.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it was fascinating to hear him share that stuff. So yeah, let's move forward so we can get through here. We got
Yeah. Hopefully 30 minutes will be done. I'm going to try to go over 30 minutes.
Yeah, we can expedite it a little bit. We don't have to get into everything as detailed as we have been.
No, yeah, and save. And if you have anything, we get towards the end. But I'll try to go through the subject matter, like the main points. But this is just stuff that actually was quoted or put into David Wilcock's book, and he was in a couple of the books, but in the latest one, he referenced him a lot with the other cosmic or a higher class of whistleblowers, and he mentions again. About the people that were eliminated, like Phil Snyder, those who were talking about the underground bases, about the 15 to 25 people in the world that have access at those highest levels that our grandfather claimed. Now, that's what Jacob says, and that's a part of this other whistleblower that David Wilcock had in his book, but that's exactly what our grandfather said in his Disclosure Project testimony. So they coincide very well. He talks about the book and the Men in Black type of scenarios. He talks about the staging fake and alien invasion, and our grandfather had mentioned these types of things. But then the thing we didn't realize is that they started to talk about materializers. Maybe this was something that was shared with David Wilcock. My grandfather did this in 2000 at the Disclosure Project in the private setting. I don't know, but he says David Wilcock claimed that our grandfather did mention this and that they had materializers to create food and print meals, basically. And same that Pete and Jacob had said this. And also note that these insiders that David, like Pete Peterson, who passed away recently, and Jacob, these all came in later after the fact. Maybe Jacob was one that was earlier, but our grandfather was one of the earlier ones to say this. Cora Good came in later after, obviously. So anyway, I'll keep moving. Now we get to the fun part about all the independent sources, all the independent sources that had this corroborating evidence of our grandfather and what they could find out. A lot of these people are mediums, channelers. Some are just like Tony Rodriguez has his own remote viewing team that has gotten very, very good at what they do. And I was able to use him and his team to help remote view some things. One person that we had to keep anonymous before, is now we can reveal, it's Elizabeth April, who was the one that had the direct connection of channeling. Apparently, the channeling it was an hour session I had with her, and so she's a very powerful remote viewer. I think everybody knows her by now, and she's getting a lot of more attention. I think she's up to 500,000 subscribers now. So, congratulations to her. She's doing great work, and I do think that she's very authentic in what she does and how she does things. Dina Mena is the one that we were talking about earlier that is still in contact with her grandfather just through, almost on a daily basis and getting information coming in. And she feels a strong connection with him, and that she was chosen to kind of help in relaying messages to me and my brother, and to help corroborate a lot of stuff that's happening. And we'll go into her a little bit more. Will Nutter was part of the SSP, and you guys know him very well. He's known as Johann Han Fritz, and he has those access to the files that says me and my brother were also a part of this, but our grandfather was very, very high up. He goes into so much details and specificity that I don't know how you can just make that up, but a lot of it coincides with what Peter the Insider was saying based on his files that are the ACIO files that are similar but different. They're different databases, and it's amazing that all these sort of line up, and all this testimony or evidence starts to line up one way or another. Elena Codd did an interesting remote viewing just on the particleization aspect, and it went into a lot of details. And I don't even know if we mentioned that to her, but she just started to pick up on that in particular, and that topic, and gave us a lot of interesting details on that. I won't go into all the details of each one. We'll talk about Dina's stuff a little bit, but Elizabeth April kind of had a great way of summarizing it. And supposedly, if it was coming direct from our grandfather, we felt it was important to summarize what he was saying and what he was involved with. So, according to her, and coming directly from our grandfather, it was revealed that he was involved with secret government programs, and from their inceptions in the 50s, he was recruited after passing a lot of rigorous testing, not just physical but mental testing, and only a very small group, maybe less than 5, actually were selected at the time. And they didn't even know why they were being tested, but it was basically to interact or actually try to solve back engineer some of this technology, or figure out what its purposes were. Initially, it was presented that technology from the crash to determine how to apply it and transition it. And it transitioned into the actual ET interactions, apparently in the 50s. And other people have sort of claimed that he might have done that, but apparently he had to just talk to them directly because it was taking too long to get the information out. But the reason for that, he was involved in brokering the deals exchanged for human test subjects. So that was maybe interesting that he might have. They had to decide: are they going to actually test on people, and should we make that agreement? And that was apparently, of course, MJ12, as we know, but maybe he was also he was being asked, and his team was being asked, like, what should we do? Is it something that we should move forward with? There was just so much pressure from the Cold War, and who would have access to this technology, and they didn't want to be stuck without getting further in developments of that. So they said they would agree to do this, but as long as no test subjects were killed and that they wouldn't be harmed. But he says that he and the people with him felt like at the time it was the right thing to do, and he feels guilty that he even agreed to that. But who knows if we would have gone anywhere with the technology as we had. Included the particle accelerators, the energy generators, electromagnetic technology, time travel technology. He did say he went through that time travel technology, but it wasn't pleasant and it was hard on the body. So that I did ask that at the end of that session. I wonder
if that was tied into some of his health issues, because we've heard that before, like Andrew Basiago and stuff.
Yeah, possibly. And then this was a part of being the government liaison with the ET, so that he could directly interface. So he eventually became that. He had another layer of personnel that were interacting with the beings at first to try to get him the information he needed to work on whatever, to look at the technology. He wanted to talk with them directly because it was just taking too long to get any of the information out. He continued the communications throughout his career. So, and I think a lot of people, if you look at other testimonies, a lot of these people have been contacted, whether, some kind of abduction experience, but they've had some kind of interactions with these beings throughout their life. And so maybe our grandfather had, we don't know that, but I'm sure maybe as a kid he was, and that's why he was selected later and the right person for this type of role. He helped establish the ET communication protocols, which was involved the inception of the secret space program, super soldier programs, but they weren't called that back then. And you have Will Nutter, and even Peter mentioned similar things about him in this way. He says he was not put through the programs as a child because they didn't exist then, but he was at the precipice of all of them and helped to develop them and the trainings for them. And it's amazing to hear that, but that's what they're saying. And he says also that the clones and the alters weren't as prevalent back then as they are in these times now. So, and we asked, was he a clone or was he just himself and had alters of himself? And it was very unclear when it came to the database whether or not he was cloned. But according to this, he said he was always himself based on her channelings and with him, that he would always want to stay his own person and remember everything. I mean, imagine that. Most of these people go to like Bob Lazar, these other people go in, they do the job, they come home and they don't remember anything. Because how would you be able to function in the real world if you're doing all that? And so that's where the mind wiping stuff comes in. But apparently he states and that he wanted to keep a memory of all that. So interesting. Go ahead, Tyler.
No, nothing. I mean, I could say a whole bunch, but we have a lot to get through. So
I know,
right.
Save it for save it for a summary if you can. But this was the last one about that and how we were supposedly involved. We've been told we've been involved by Peter, by Will, and others, and some aspect. But according to what she was saying, he knew we were being put in the programs early on because you start at like the age of even 2 to see if in your screen to see if you're even eligible to go into it. And there's a small percentage that do end up going and being tested and then become whatever the super soldier whatever term you want to call it. So apparently he knew we were involved early on, but by the time, say I was 10 or by the time my brother was a teenager, he wanted to put a stop to it. So maybe according to this, he had the ability to do that. I don't know. Maybe they got an aspect of our DNA or whatever and made clones and made whatever from that. But he's claiming that physically they stopped interacting with us or putting us in the programs at that age. He was disappointed in the way all the programs were being run, and he did not agree with their current practice and how everything's evolved since his time there. He's withheld a tremendous amount of information from his book, even from his book. Let me go back to that. And 98% of his career was above top secret. He says full disclosure is eventually inevitable. He decided not to disclose the negative agendas in his book as to not overwhelm the public. And his ET encounters were primarily positive. But that goes on to say, like, why would he not be talking so much about his own military career over the whole course of, as we knew him? He never talked about it. But if it was top secret like this, then that explains a lot and the ties to, in the book. So
it would be really cool if you could somehow convince Elizabeth April to do a short video on your grandfather and what she remote viewed. That would send that testimony out into a much larger audience. Put a lot more eyes on it.
That would be huge.
Yeah, I might do that. I mean, she doesn't want to do a follow up. Like I've tried to ask to do like a follow up, but if she'd be willing to even just mention it, I'll see. But it was a great help to have her, and the fact that she's getting so big is a help too in all this. Chris, quickly on Dina and the fact that she's still getting communications now. It's a long story, and me and my brother have talked about it on our platform, so people can go there to see the whole deep dive we do into it. But all these validations that have come up over the last couple of years, and that still come up, and I won't go into details, but like things like my brother wearing cowboy boots as a kid, and that was the first thing that he showed Dina was him trying to put on the cowboy boots, and that was like for my brother a huge validation. A lot of other like little details and items of his and that would come up. The black beret that we didn't realize he had a black beret, but my mom, confirmed it that he did wear a black beret when he lived in Taos, and he would do these videos and talk about all this stuff. So apparently he was a black beret at some point in his career, I guess. Multiple confirmations about MJ12 because everything keeps tying back to that. So at some level, he must have been working with them, or at some, who knows, and maybe working with the protocols that the MJ12 documents. It's just too much that lines up with that. The one thing that actually just happened today, I'll tell you, or yesterday, Dina was messaging me and saying, "Look, I know he's coming in. He's aware that you're working hard on even this presentation, or that I'm doing a lot of research right now and getting this out into the public, and she just wanted me to know that. And then this morning, so we have a piano in our house. It has like the automatic, like you hit the button and it just starts playing random songs, right? And it's all done randomly. Well, the one song that came up, which I've never heard it play before, was Danny Boy, which was like his song. Like literally it's the song that I played guitar in while I was in a hot air balloon with my mom, and we spread his ashes over Taos, and I'm playing that song. And now I just hear it, right before I'm about to do the show with you, and after what Dina told me, and that's playing, and it just like played for like 10 minutes straight. I'm like, this is too much of a coincidence for
That's
that.
amazing.
Wow.
So
Wow,
that
that's incredible.
just tells you, like, he's around. He's around right now. He talked a lot about Antarctica. That's what Dina was saying. So much coming out of Antarctica. Some reefs going down there with Palladians on board. There's a huge mix of the good and the bad of all. He saw a lot of things that were pretty disturbing down there, things that are not so good. There are new civilizations, or the inner Earth type civilizations, apparently. And he knows, apparently all that. He's trying to communicate a lot of activity down there. Even some of the bases, Wright-Patterson base was something he mentioned, being able to go into the lower levels that most people aren't aware of. The Wingmaker stuff, you mentioned the caves and putting the hand on the cave, and kind of having that access to travel through dimensions, that kind of thing is interesting. The particularization aspect of it. This was recently something else that came up within the past few months. Like, I'm just going through this stack of old papers of his, and this is just a medical record where he had to go get a checkup in Taos. And Dina had just messaged me and my brother the day before and said he keeps on bringing up something about radiation and these tubes of reactive material of some sort. Never had that ever come up before. But then the next day, I'm looking at this paper, and it says, he went ahead and said, yes, I was exposed to radiation.
Hmm.
None of us know anything about that or why he would be exposed to radiation.
Wow.
And when it comes to crash retrievals and all that, that's what they say. A lot of it, you're around that, and you're exposed some way to that, right?
Right.
Okay. So I'm not going to be able to go a whole lot into this, but this is just to show you, like, 8 out of 8 means 8 out of the 8 independent sources all said, yes, it was a hit, that he was involved with the shadow government or with UFOs or with ETs. So I'm just listing them down one after the other. Again, none of these people talk to each other. We never told them, we're trying to gather, from all these sources information about specifically about this. Sometimes we ask specific questions. Sometimes they would just start telling us this information, and they all started to like line up and corroborate each other. And that he was working with the good side, the white hats. All of them said that. He worked with Haiti Advanced Tech. He was able to go into the dumps and work on projects at some level. He interacted with some of the beings. Only 5 out of the 8 said that. At some point, in his career, he had been on an ET craft. 5 out of 8 said that. At some point, he was dealing with time travel technology or portal technology. 5 out of 8 said that. He had been involved in the SSP or secret super soldier programs at some level. 4 out of 8. He was involved with MJ12 as a member, or had the clearance level to have access to that. 4 out of 8. He was somehow involved with DNA experiments or giving blood, something to do with experimentation on himself, and that was 4 out of 8. And then involved with cloning or clones or cloning technology, 4 out of 8. And then the Wingmakers, only a few we actually asked specifically about Wingmakers, or that it came up, and that was with Peter from the ACIO and with Dina confirming that. Then it went into, we asked about us and if we were involved. 5 out of 8 said that we are somehow involved with the programs, or maybe another aspect, another timeline where we are. And then the Peter is the only one that mentions we're part of this SWAN, organization. And
Or the Dharma Initiative.
Right.
Right.
It's
Wow.
very much like, there's so many weird things like that stand out about that show, and what's, Swan dealing with time travel, that show dealing with time travel. It's part of a Monarch, offshoot of the Monarch program. And as I'm learning all this, I'm like, I noticed like the Monarch, it just happened to be that van there. And you notice synchronicity. So I pointed that out. I showed it to you, Todd, or like, hey, I just saw this
Yep.
randomly walking after getting clues that I'm tied to the program. And then I was in Germany of all places and walking down a dark alley, in a big city of Germany, and there's nobody there, and this sign, the swan sign and Swarovski symbols there, and I'm just like, this is too weird, because I was just about to go see Jessica within the day or two. She happened to be in Europe at the time, and we were going to go talk about Swan and anything else about that topic. And there, I'm here in Germany, and there it is. So I don't know, it's weird.
Right.
You
And
make
then
this
there
stuff
was,
up.
there was Drago, who did a QHHT on us. So check out Drago and his show, it's Portals to Another Dimension, I believe. But he has his own channel. He was working with Laura a lot. He's very, very talented at what he does. Also a badass tattoo artist, but he is big into the programs, and he's probably put together the most amount of information possible, and stuff that there's no way this guy can just be making this stuff up. He literally has almost complete recall of all these things that he's been a part of. Anyway, he's got into QHHT. He tried it on me and my brother to see if we could recall what we remember being in the programs. My brother got more, I think, with it more down into some of the details. I mean, there was blockage the whole time, though, from what my brother said, and he talks about it a little bit more. But like every time they tried to tap into what he was involved with, there was something blocking, even like a large metal plate over his head, like over the whole the time they were doing the session. And this was hours and hours, a full day of trying to get something out of it. And so our grandfather came through with him a little bit and was trying to connect, but just a lot of emotion and imagery that my brother got. I didn't get much of anything. And Drago said it's only a few people that he's ever had that, even with him, where there was just complete blocking of whether it was something else interfering, or even myself, my higher self, maybe saying, you're not ready to know this. You don't need to go down that path, whatever it is. There's all sorts of reasons. So some things that happened to me personally, and why like I kind of take this more seriously, is because I had a few incidents myself, and I don't like to bring this up, but I mean, I can't say it any other way than I saw this reptilian thing outside of Taos, outside of my grandfather's house in Taos, in the middle of the night. I was with a friend. I was like 16. We know what we saw. We weren't, on drugs or doing anything under the influence. We literally were just taking a walk on a full moon, and at the top of the hill, we saw this outline of this creature, and it was starting to move out, and it was upright. It was standing upright, moving towards us. It had a tail. It was like hobbling, like with a tail and coming at us. And we just saw the silhouette of this thing, and we're like, we got to get out of here. This is weird. Or this isn't going to turn out well if we stick around. So anyway, it happened to me as a kid. I kind of blocked it out or left it out of my mind for years, until all this stuff started to come up in the media and, alternative news, and everything we hear now is like leading to the fact that this stuff's real. The JFK thing was something I happened to do with a couple friends at the time, who were very much into that stuff. I don't like to go into that, but because they were doing it, I was like, well, let me try to see if my grandfather comes through, because they could just easily talk to their dead relatives. It was like a thing, and they were just very tapped in. It was a family of women, actually. I mean, a mom and two daughters that were doing this, and they were very good at that. I don't know. I think it has to do with the people and the setting. Anyway, I tried with my grandfather with them to ask if he's there. He didn't come through. I asked if JFK is there, and all of a sudden I get some answers back, and we have a whole show about that and going in deep diving into what he said. But very interesting stuff. He said, the establishment. There's the main message was there's dark money, and it's run by the establishment. Many things about, concerns with, what Eisenhower told him, what Forrestal told him, because he was good friends with Forrestal, who was apparently a part of MJ-12 at the beginning, and wanted to release the information about the UFOs, and he was killed for that. He was suicided, but and there's no doubt that he shared a lot of that with JFK. Dr. Sala talks about that in his book Kennedy's Last Stand, and it's an important book to read. And how he's tied to the UFO topic, and even trying to release that before his assassination. I also had an experience when I was around the same time, about 10 years ago, and the CIA decides to call me and ask me, do I want to work for them? And I've never reached out to them and or tried to apply for a job, so it's kind of weird to get a call. It was a younger woman recruiter on the phone, and we had a couple conversations, and she said, come look at you can come look at the subscription in the library, but don't go on your phone or computer. Don't ever look us up there. Buy your books, buy these couple of books with paper, with cash, not with a card or anything. So no tracing them back to them. I think they wanted me to go down to some country like South America. At this point, I know it was Venezuela. They were hoping I'd go work down there and basically get paid nothing, but become an asset and probably, what do you call it when you're you're indispensable, you're expendable.
Expendable,
And-
yeah.
Yeah,
You'd
you're not getting out alive of that.
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
You'd be a sleeper cell. They'd activate you when they need you. You go on a mission, and then they'd make a movie about you called Derek Identity.
Born Identity, yeah. Exactly.
The Derek idea.
So, I mean, all of that was happening. I mean, it was true. It was a real conversation. They really were trying to get me in and see if I would play ball with them and do it. And I kind of just, I knew it wasn't going to happen. I took it somewhat seriously. It was like, that's not going to work, especially if you're not paying me for one, but you're definitely not the people I would trust to work for. And who am I working for? Right. So all that was a huge factor. I didn't go, obviously, but all these things kind of line up as to why I'm taking a lot of the stuff I'm researching about my grandfather seriously. And then this goes back to the JFK and like that last thing he stated, one of the last things he wanted to do. And this is probably what was the main reason they wanted to get rid of him, was he wanted to do a joint space race with Soviet Union, with the Russians, that would basically just eliminate the need for the Cold War. If we were like, well, we'll give up our intelligence so that we can do a joint space race together, so that we have all information on UFOs out there, so that we're not accidentally trying to kill each other, basically because we thought it was the Soviets when it's a UFO, right? So he knew all that was very important, and to get that taken care of and to work together. And so that was a document that came out shortly before his assassination that he wanted to have to go into effect. So that Dr. Sella talks about that in his book. I just wanted to tie this in real quick about Apollo missions. Did you realize, the symbolism Apollo 11 and then Artemis 2 and how they, to me, I think that just kind of stood out. The A and the 2, obviously the 1 and the LL, but it ties back to this symbolism. And it's the 2 missions that got us, supposedly we went to the moon, and, at least the first one where we were at the moon, the second one where we went back. But I think that's all symbolism they're using there. I just wanted to point out this part of The Shining and how he's wearing Apollo 11 shirt or sweater. And go look at the movie Room 237 by Jay Widener, and it will explain a lot of those hidden meetings and why Stanley Kubrick supposedly probably ended up filming a version of us going to the moon and helped with that. And The Shining was all about him trying to tell everybody, this is what they made me do. They didn't want me to talk about it. And there's so much symbolism in that movie that ties that together.
Well,
So,
and before you change slides, the movie Ready Player One, have you seen that?
yeah.
So they talk about Room 237. So it's like an Easter egg. They're, Easter egg in the film. They're looking for the next clue, and they're sent into like a Shining simulation. And the answer that they're looking for is in Room 237. Like there's a whole, and it deals with the moon stuff. It's another Easter egg in that movie. So
Very interesting.
Real quick, everything NASA does is an occult ritual, essentially, or encoded in occult symbolism and things like this. And there's a really good book called Dark Mission by Richard C. Hoagland and Mike Barra, who go really in depth into details of every detail of what NASA does is occult based. Freemasonic based and things like this, including all their missions. That's why it's called Apollo. That's what the symbolism that we just pointed out here. Not a single detail goes by with them that is not very intentional in that regard.
And that's one of the books I reference at the end as a collection of books. But he says, the magicians, the Masons, and the Nazis, they basically all had this symbolism and we're using it all the time. So within NASA, for sure. Yep. Now it goes back to DC, and this is kind of like the last thing I wanted to touch upon that, ties it back to even the IPU, the address in Washington, WA25 DC. I was trying to research what that was, and if that was an address. And so I'm going back in old maps, and I just noticed, like, I don't know, I'm just picking up the symbolism of things and how the layout of DC is, and we'll get to that. But like the Masonic Temple, how close it is to the White House, the patent office happens to be there. I'm just thinking, like, there's got to be all sorts of underground tunnels and stuff that lead from one way to the other. But I was like, well, that's where the Masonic Temple used to be. So where is it today? And then when you go and do a search on that, it's called House of the Temple, and it is like the main headquarters of Masonry, at least on the Western Hemisphere, I think. Oh, but you have that obviously inverted star that we've seen before, and that's kind of a Masonic symbol, or that can be it can be misused, in a way. But they've taken that symbol, and that's exactly what is shown out in the layout of DC. And if you see where the White House is and you go to the center of the star and you flip it, that's what you see where the Masonic Lodge is now, the headquarters is. So it's kind of like showing you, the ties to who are the real controllers of DC. And maybe they're trying to say it's the Masons, right?
Right.
And it's always been that way. And I'm sure there's so many different underground tunnels and systems within DC, and they're talking about that a lot nowadays. And this is just to show you more of the layout, how it's tied to that symbol of the Eastern Star, even though it was like founded in 1850, that order was, but the symbol was always there from the beginning. And shows you some other ties and how the Pentagon's tied there to it. And it again has that five-sided shape with the star and the Pentagon interrelated. Thought that was fascinating. I'm just tying those dots together. And
didn't you mention also, like, you think the building of the ballroom or the destruction of the East Wing essentially is like breaking that circuit, whatever that pentagram was doing, that, because obviously it ties directly in with the grid, and that's why they have like the Washington Monument and stuff like that. So by destroying something that's there, it actually potentially, like you said, it upsets that
yes.
that network.
Yes, and all the a lot of stuff hidden and happening underground. Supposedly that stuff, the energy and that resonance is kind of slowly dissipating away, not happening as frequently. Hopefully, even like the same with like getting rid of the underground bases and all that stuff Gene Decode talks about. But I just wanted to tie all this in. Dr. Sala actually brings all this up. He did that last fall, and it was just after, I had already released the presentation and presented in July, but then he started talking about it, and I was like, we got to talk about this. So I went on his show. I revealed some of this stuff with him, and just the ties to this book, The Master Game, is a very important book to read by Graham Hancock, Robert Faval, and that really goes into the Masons and how the symbolism tied to all these structures. It goes back to even like the Gnostics and all these other groups and orders that came up, and through the Knights Templar and everything else. But the Masons, they hold high in regard the star Sirius, the 5-pointed star, which goes back to Egypt, known as the Blazing Star. The layout of DC has a lot of the cornerstones of the first buildings in alignment with the helical rising of Sirius, and this has been coming up more and more about now it's more in the news, widely known that the Pentagon had been it had been, the groundbreaking ceremony was actually 60 years to the day of 9/11 when the Pentagon went up, and the symbolism behind that, and it going and then being hit in 60 years to the day, and there's a strike on the Pentagon. It was like it was interesting because of, again, it ties back to what are they trying to establish within our understanding, or get us to start thinking, okay, it goes back to this whole New Jerusalem and Israel idea, and that's kind of what I'm getting at here towards the end. But the Roosevelt was a 32nd degree Mason, Truman a 33rd degree Mason, and it's coinciding with their presidents 32nd and 33rd. Both contributed to the creation of Israel in 1948, just after the 47 and all the other stuff happening. Well, it's like it's almost like the Masons and these secret societies now wanted to implement their plan and get the state of Israel up and going. And if we skip down by 1967, the Temple Mount, which is considered the new temple of Jerusalem. The Temple Mount was officially taken over by Israel. Those final four 30th to 33 degrees of Scottish Rite Freemasonry are those final stages of initiation to Masonic enlightenment, and that's what it represents in the rebuilding of Solomon's temple, again tying back to Jerusalem and to Israel. And interesting, though, Israel is on the 30th to 33rd latitude, and basically where the Great Pyramid of Giza is. But they made those state boundaries of Israel at that time, and so that might not be by coincidence. I just referenced as Eisenhower is the 34th president because I believe that's very symbolic as him he's kind of the trump card as far as I think he was the one to step in and be like, I'm going to expose this. I want to put an end to this. I want to create this white hat movement to stop what I see already happening with the military industrial complex. And I think that's symbolic that Eisenhower comes in after to do that.
100%. And that's a great point. I didn't even make that connection until you just said that, the 34th. Yeah. That's very symbolic. That's
right.
I just came up with that after doing some of this too.
Oh, nice.
I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And Lord Isaac was doing a great job coming and speaking out about that right now. So
yes,
lots of good work for her. And I actually hope to do a show with her pretty soon and have her on because there's so much in disclosure right now that she's well aware of. And some of these people like Hal Puthoff that are like these figureheads of disclosure, and these are all CIA people. Why are we trusting like CIA people like Luis Elizondo to come and give us the truth about
right. They're going to give us the full truth. Right.
So
no deception going on here. Right.
That's just another topic, but this was important. And I've never put it in the slides, but the Wise Men of Zion, the Protocols of the Wise Men of Zion, they say this was debunked and this isn't true, but apparently, supposedly it came originally from the Illuminati of Bavaria in the late 1700s. And it lays it out. Even if this is only 100 years old, which they might claim it is now, it's still showing you exactly what they're doing today. I mean, it's insane that they would have this. And if anybody would take the time to write this, then somebody believes it's true, and somebody's probably been using it as a manifesto. But notice all freedom will thus be in our hands, since the laws will abolish or create only that which is desirable for us, according to the aforesaid program that they describe. I beg you to note that among those making attacks upon us will also be organs established by us, but they will attack exclusively points that we have predetermined to alter. Not a single announcement will reach the public without our control. So everything related to the press and how the press works, they're like, yeah, we have control of all of it, and we've set it up that way. Even those that are against us, they'll really be working for us because we'll have it disseminated in a certain way. The Goyim, again, is the cattle, what they call everybody else on the planet. The other human is a Goyim if they're not part of this elite Zionist group. And so that's the term they use, talking about how to keep us silent, or use without official documentation. They would use the spread of their ways of doing news or whatever to make people think or believe what they want to put out there. I mean, that's basically summing up what it's saying. It says also, for the daily bread forces, basically, they would create sports, create entertainment, dumb us down to just be distracted by amusements, games, pastimes, passions, people's palaces. Soon we shall begin through the press to propose competitions in arts, sports of all kinds. So this was written so long ago, it's predicted exactly to a T what's happening right now. All these people were stage managed by us according to a political plan, which no one has so much as guessed at in the course of many centuries. So if it's true, it's been planned out for many, many centuries. And that's how they work. They work through hundreds of years, not just, a few years or a decade or two. I mean, this is generations they've been doing this stuff.
Yep, 100%.
And the last piece that ties this together was another piece of information from my grandfather's storage that it goes back to the Dulce files. The source of the Dulce files is Branton. He went by the name Branton. But there was a small group of people that were emailing back and forth. My grandfather was one of those people, and I don't know if this type of information is actually in the book or a variation of it. Could be, but it sums it up very nicely, and it talks about the third or higher degree Masons and how those that are higher than 33 degrees actually know what's going on, and they're working directly with the Draco reptilians, and it goes into the underground, layers, the grays and the hierarchy of the Draco, the white Draco. They've been there for millions of years. They've been here way before the humans have. They believe this is their rightful planet, and that's why there's such a feud and all these wars that have been happening. And they've been working behind the scenes, but now they're becoming more, visible as we go through. We can see that in media, in everything we see. I mean, it's just becoming more mainstream, and the Luciferian aspect of that. And so they basically say they always have pitted the right against the left. The right National Socialists to the left-wing global socialist agendas, all trace back to Bavaria, the Luciferian cult based, or whether it's the Judo-Christian. But at the end of the day, it's a Machiavellian program to basically put us against each other, or those factions that are one and the same, that are working at the highest levels, are being infiltrated. Even the Scottish Rite, Freemasonries, all that has been infiltrated by these other forces that are non-human at the end of the day. If you believe and go into this type of information from the files. Sirius B, it also ties back to Sirius, and since has been shaken by the split between the two opposing Astarian factions, and reportedly the war had reportedly raged through Sirius system for several years. Apparent reflection of division with the underground networks of North America, with the Pleiadian-backed Syrian humanoids versus the Orion-backed Syrian reptoids, which both are manipulated operations in the underground level. So much happening underground, and then it just bleeds into the surface of the wars and things we're seeing, I believe, on the surface too. So again, just interesting files my grandfather had. This was one where apparently him and this guy Steve Wingate were validating information from the Branton files, I believe, for what he had to say. They were saying basically the reptilians believe that they, have an influence, that they can control the shadow government, and that their plans will see through to the end. But this is kind of saying, whoever was writing this says that will not be brought to fruition, for the simple reason the forces of light are dedicated to seeing God's divine plan is fulfilled on planet Earth and on other planets now under domination of the Orion dynasty. And so, and again, I mentioned the clearing of the domes, and Gene Decode talks about that. So I think a lot of that's been taken care of, and maybe Trump had a lot to do with that to help put that into place. And this is just referencing a lot of the books that either my grandfather mentioned or that I've read, and that I think tie into a lot of this. Secret Teaching of All Ages, David Icke's books, Jim Marrs, Joseph Farrell, Sands of Time, again, Dulcie, Zacharias Ditch and the 12 Planets. So just fascinating. All these things you can read to get information that is in my grandfather's testimony that I've also researched. And so we're approaching the middle shift. This is the end. What can we do about it? How, knowing all this information, now what? He says, you need not search for a wise teacher. You are that teacher. When we realize we are not a body, that the real self is a waveform, we have no limitations. That's what particleization is about. And a waveform, you can go to another dimension, another solar system or galaxy. In that state, you're one with the universal mind or universal computer. The multidimensional, knowledge and comprehension is basically harmonics of light is the type of science of light technology through which the ETs move. We're now approaching the mergings of the worlds with our own reality. And that's why we're seeing kind of this bleed through. And that's why I like the term shred the veil, because we're seeing a bleed through of these other worlds, these higher dimensions or other forces, whether they're good or bad. We're kind of getting it all right now. And it's the lifting of the veil that's happening. And the Hopis talked about this as the fifth world, as another consciousness. And the only way to the sixth world is through the way of peace to survive and usher in that sixth world. My grandfather mentioned the music of the spheres, which is talked about a lot in the ancient teachings and esoteric teachings of how the world actually works. And it's about frequency, vibration. And this is the last slide really on what he talked about, the Mayan calendar ending, where our DNAs, are activating. We're rising to the next higher levels of frequency, and our consciousness is rising. All of this is being played out at the right time. The 2012, is obviously, this book was before 2012, but that was a pivotal point based on the end of the Mayan calendar, where we're approaching other parts of the galaxy that are kind of activating our system, are activating the planet even. And so everything's coming back online. He said there is seventh most powerful sense of the human instrument, and that's linked to time travel, linked to space travel. The ancient era site, the Wingmaker site, he talks about, believe that ET time travel technology may be the synthesis of human consciousness in a biocomputing whose neural net is able to adjust dimensional sequencing with such precision that a window of time can be opened and maintained for an indefinite period. So again, back to time travel and our ability to go from one point of space to another. I like to say this too, like, what's the fastest way to travel through space? And what would you guys say to that?
Travel through time.
Yeah, but as far as like, would you use people think you have to use a machine, right?
Your mind. Your mind.
Yeah.
Consciousness.
Yeah.
It's consciousness. Yeah, it's your mind. That's it. And what is the most powerful technology in all of the universe? It's not a machine. It's us. We are.
It's us.
Right.
Consciousness.
Yeah. It goes back to that. And that's the key point to remember out of all this. And, you know, we can use certain tools, and all this technology that we can use is just like a tool to help get us there. But if we go back to how we were intended to evolve, and all these higher gurus and Jesus and anybody like that, it's basically saying we have the power within us to do all these things and greater. We don't need all these other tools, but they can be used as tools to help us or to hurt us, depending on what we decide. And that was an interesting thing about the epilogue. He says, you know, we're coming into 1,000 years of peace after 2012. And if you looked at Sean David Morton's website, and what he talked about, the Night of the Jaguar was what the Mayans believe is kind of this, like, almost like a birth canal. And we just ended that end of last year, which was that a 13-year window. And so that's what we just came out of. And it's kind of just showing that we're just babies being born into this new part of our timeline, where we have to create it. Now it's like we're learning to crawl and walk all over again, you know, with all this new information and how fast things are moving. And I just added the last couple slides to show the AI stuff of how likely would my grandfather make up all this information, and who in the past would be on the same level as him as far as coming out and disclosing stuff like this. And it came out and spit out people like Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter, who was MJ1, first director of CIA, Colonel Corso, who we know came out with The Day After Roswell, Arthur Exxon, I've never heard of, David Grush, we all know who that is. So it's saying that he would have been at the level of these people coming out with this information, and there would be no reason for him to fabricate any of this. I mean, there's no incentive. It's only going to make his life harder. It makes our life harder as a family if he's just making it all up. He doesn't get any money out of it. He never made any money off that book. We still don't have the rights to the book, so we've never made a dime of that, other than, you know, purchasing it and selling 5 copies at your conference 2 years ago. That was about it.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But that's just to tell you, like, there's no benefit for him coming out with this and fabricating it. And out of all that he's done with his career, why would you do that? Less than 5% chance he would have done that. I actually did a whole nother, a whole lot more pages of AI to talk about the license plate, the stamp, all these other factors, and how likely would he have been involved with this or that, and it spit out all these percentages. So a lot of more accurate percentages about the stamp. It kind of changed the probability to even higher based on that physical evidence. So that's what it's showing. More about time travel, whether he's involved with that, the secret underground base, Stargates, NRO, post-retirement, a lot more higher percentages than before in some cases. And overall, it's about 80%. It says it has to be substantially true, and the probability is less than 3 that he would make it all up based on the evidence provided.
Well,
And that's,
yeah, and I think that, like, those statistics are only would even appeal to a skeptic who might find their way into this video. Like, I think that the testimony,
Right.
it all speaks for itself. And if you're, like, feeling into this stuff with your heart, like, you would never need those statistics to prove to yourself that this is real,
Right.
you know, because you'll feel it already. So,
It's
that's
further validation, regardless.
exactly.
It's always amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it's great. But which unfortunately some people nowadays need that.
Right.
people are like, "Where's the proof? I don't see it. I don't believe it." And then even if you give them that, you're not gonna satisfy
Yeah.
everybody, but you've gone above and beyond to cover your tracks here, which I really appreciate, and I think people watching
Yeah.
this,
This is
will
incredible, man. This
yeah,
is yeah, props to you for this is so amazing that you've compiled all of this.
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for the time to share all of that. And this are quotes that we already read, but he did say the aliens are going to force the hand of destiny. If we don't tell, they will. When they have made enough contact with enough people, they will reveal all this information. So, and we have Star Wars technology. The free energy exists. All of that, and it's not a time to be fearful, but a time to be bold. And yeah, no, thanks again for having me share this with you. It's been a long journey to get all this out. I know he's been wanting more of this information to come out, and this was the last thing. Even if you guys want to read some of this, but it's the one message he puts in the front of the book, and it sums up exactly what we're going through. Um, I'll let you guys. If does anybody want to read it besides me?
Tyler, you want to
Uh,
read it?
yeah, it's a little blurry, but I can read it here. So, a message from the Hopi elders. You have been telling people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell people that this is the hour, and there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in the right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth, create your community, be good to each other, and do not look outside yourself for the leader. This could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are being torn apart, and they will suffer greatly. Know the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the river. Keep your eyes open, open our heads above the water. And our heads above the water. See who is in there with you and celebrate. And this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves, banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for, the elders. Hopi Nation.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So
I
spot
think
on.
that sums it up. Yeah.
Sums it up right there.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
I'm going to really quickly, before we even do a summary, I'm going to share my screen and play this last video that you sent me. And
Perfect.
then we can wrap this up because we've been going for quite some time, and I have another meeting here in an hour. So let's
Good.
let me get this up.
For your own individual conscious and mind have to come to that conclusion. But what they said was that they have been coming here for thousands of years since the beginning. And that they do this when things need change. They don't come to save anybody. I'm going to load this up, take it off anywhere, anything. But when we begin to destroy so many other type beings, there are beings here that we don't see, we don't know. Sometimes we catch a glimpse or we catch a feeling. Okay? But we have now, since nuclear weapons have come into being, destroyed some of these beings, just like we destroyed some of the beings that we do see, like the carrier pigeons and the buffalo and other creatures that we've eliminated from this sphere.
Yeah, and that's kind of ties into with what you just said. I mean,
Yeah.
these beings are here. They're in other dimensions and other frequencies. We can sense them sometimes. But what's more important that he said there, I think, above and beyond anything else, is that no one's going to come and take us off planet and save us. And I still see that narrative being perpetuated by very influential figures. And I think that some of the information, unfortunately, that people are channeling could be CIA script narratives that is coming from satellites, and there's evidence to support that at this point. So you have to be very careful where your information comes from. We've been getting a lot of backlash lately just because we give people a stage to share this information, and people think that we're like somehow complicit in this psyop or something because we're just letting these people share their thoughts and not challenging them. But it's not up to us to tell you
It
guys
proves
what's
it
true.
proves that
Yeah.
you're not a it proves that you're not a gatekeeper. I'm sorry, but there's so many gatekeepers out there, and you guys are not gatekeepers. That's the bottom line. It's
Right.
beautiful. It's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Yes.
honestly, man, like
Not super-
there's so much here that you put into this presentation. This was 2 parts and is effectively, this could be a 5 to 6 hour presentation if you really took your time.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would recommend, I know you don't have the time to do this. Obviously, a documentary would be amazing, a docuseries would be amazing, but even you could break this up into like 30-minute segments and
Right.
really go deep into each one. It's more digestible for people. I think that will go a long way as far as, because like unfortunately the attention span of the average person is not 2.5 hours anymore, you know?
Right. Right.
So it's fascinating. It's excellent research. It's necessary because one of the comments yesterday got under one of our videos. Where's the proof? Who are the people that are saying this stuff? But it's like they're seeing the stuff on social media, but they don't have the material in their hands, and most people aren't going to take the time to read it. So
Right.
if we're going to do our due diligence, we have to present it in such a way that makes it tangible, that people can grab onto and maintain their interest. It has to be neuro-linguistically engaging. So the people that stick through to the end of this, they're ready for this information. And what I would say moving forward is find a way to bundle this that could be more appealing for the shorter attention span because you have something here. And that's why it would be cool if Elizabeth April or somebody can do a video. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
to discount anything that you've covered today because it really needs to be covered this way to
Yeah.
do it justice. So
Right.
congratulations to you for
In
doing all
addition
this.
to this.
Yeah. In
not
addition, not
in
instead of it.
replacement. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Right. Right.
But yeah, because this is gold, and like you said, Tyler, people need to hear this and to understand this stuff is real, and how much is out there that verifies that this stuff is real, and this is some of the best. Like honestly, this package like you just presented here it doesn't get any better than that. So
Right.
I appreciate
thank you.
that.
So thank you.
Especially for the people that really are serious that want to learn.
Yeah.
Like people like, okay, where can you send me? Like what can I grab onto here that makes this real? It's these 2 episodes and
Like-
everything on your channel. Yeah.
Yeah. Pick a door. There's lots of doors that I just
Right.
show you a lot of doors to go through. So yeah.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and then so let's just not, let's just wrap this up. We've been here for a while. So just let our audience know once again where they can find you and your website, YouTube channel, or whatever, all that stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. It's just right now we just have the YouTube channel and it's called CLR Thought, but our show is called Shred the Veil. Maybe we'll just make it Shred the Veil one day, but it's CLR Thought on YouTube, and if you put the link, you'll find everything there. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a website one day. I do hope to really break this down, maybe a docuseries. I'd love to do that at some point. It's just when we get the time to do it. But I really appreciate all the feedback you've given me and the time. It's invaluable. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get more again. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and again, thank you so much for putting all the time and effort into this.
Yes.
I mean, I think when you're compiling information, you don't realize how long of a presentation it's going to be in your head. It's like I can fly through this, but you get into it
Right.
to
Yeah.
really to really make the
Do it
information.
justice.
Yeah, to really do
Yeah,
it justice.
You have to. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that being said, thank you so much. Thank you guys all for tuning in, who stuck around for the entire episode. We appreciate you being here. Go check out the YouTube channel. And Derek, I think you should find somebody to work with for a website to really get this information somewhere that you could even just somehow put the slideshow on a website that people can peruse themselves. I don't know. I'm just kind of brainstorming here because I think that you're at the very early stages of getting this information out to a much broader audience. And I think that can be done if done right, so.
Yeah. I appreciate it, and I hope to do that. Yeah, me and my brother will see what we can do. Again, thank you so much for your time, everybody,
Yeah.
for listening.
Yeah, and go buy the book, Life of the Cosmos Clearance.
Everyone buy the book.
Read it and do a deep dive yourself. And yeah, thank you so much. Again, can't say enough about how impressive this compilation of research is, honestly.
Yeah.
And there were so many times I wanted to jump in even more, but I was like, that'll put this at 4 hours.
And exactly. There's so many branch offs we could have done because there's so much here. But it's incredible. But everyone can do that on their own. Like any specific thing in here, you can go down your own rabbit hole with, you know. So
And I'd love to still talk about Sands of Time with you, Tyler. Hopefully soon we can decide.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's read the whole series too. We could potentially just do a Sands of Time roundtable like we've talked about, and just kind of like, you know, compare notes on the books and get into some of that material. We have a lot on our schedule, but we can definitely try and squeeze that in at some point. So
yeah, no worries. And maybe I'll even join Aaron. We'll see if I'm close enough to go by and visit. We'll do something up there. So
yeah, because you have
we
to hang out, man. We have to. Yeah.
Sure, for sure.
All right.
Thanks again, everybody.
Yep. All right. Good night, everybody. We love you. And until next time, have a great evening.
Thanks.